Today we are talking about surrogacy. What actually is it? How it works? The real benefits and the honest challenges. What it costs, and most importantly, how to figure out whether this is the right move for you right now. This is going to be an honest conversation with a doctor who cares. What's up, guys? Welcome to Hey Doc with me, Dr. Kady. On this channel, we talk about reproductive medicine, women's health, and antenatal care. So if that is a type of thing that you enjoy, do make sure that you subscribe, click the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I release a new video. As well as being a board certified family clinician, I enjoy doing other things such as public speaking, and I'm also the author of Waiting on God His Way whilst being positioned for results. Grab your copy, it's available on Amazon. Now, how can I do justice to the topic of reproductive medicine without addressing a very important topic, which is surrogacy? Me addressing this topic on this channel has been overdue for a very long time. So without further delays, we're digging into the topic. We're leaving no aspect of surrogacy untouched, unaddressed, unrevealed. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the basics. Surrogacy is one of those words that gets used a lot, but not everyone means exactly the same thing when they say it. Surrogacy is an arrangement in which a woman called the surrogate, or sometimes she's referred to as the gestational carrier, that woman will come into an agreement to carry and deliver a baby for another person or a couple, known as the intended parents. Now, there are different types of surrogacy. Type 1, in gestational surrogacy, the surrogate has no genetic connection to the baby she will carry. An embryo is created through IVF, and this is in vitro fertilization, using the egg and sperm from the intended parents or from donors. The embryo is then transferred to the surrogate's uterus. She then carries the pregnancy, and she is not the biological mother. That means she has no biological or genetic connection to the child she will carry. The second type of surrogacy is known as traditional surrogacy. In traditional surrogacy, the surrogate actually owns the egg that is used, meaning she is also biologically connected to the child, so she is the biological mother of the child. This form of surrogacy is far less common today because it creates a significant complex legal and emotional as well as ethical considerations. Most agencies no longer facilitate traditional surrogacy. So going forward, an important note is that for the rest of the video, when I say surrogacy, I'm referring to gestational surrogacy, okay? Unless I, of course, say otherwise. So going forward, anytime I say surrogacy, I'm talking about when the baby in the womb of the surrogate mother is not biologically connected to the surrogate mother. Let's talk about who surrogacy is for. Surrogacy is not a single story. The people who walk this road come from very different places. Here are the most common situations or reasons why people may decide to conceive a child or become parents through the means of surrogacy. The first group is, of course, people who are facing fertility challenges or uterine conditions or have significant uterine conditions. If you've been diagnosed with an absent or malformed uterus, or you have had a hysterectomy, and that's the removal, your uterus has had to be removed because of different complications, surrogacy may be a path to allow you to have your own biological child, which you would otherwise not be able to carry. Another group of people for whom surrogacy might be appropriate are people for whom pregnancy poses a serious risk to their general health, their general being, and sometimes those people falling pregnant could actually be life-threatening. For example, these women looking to become parents through surrogacy who have significant conditions with their heart, or certain cancers, or severe autoimmune conditions. There are real situations where carrying a pregnancy could be life-threatening. Surrogacy allows parenthood without that risk. The next group of people for whom surrogacy might be considered are couples who have experienced repeated IVF failures. Sometimes the challenge isn't the egg or the sperm quality, it's implantation. A surrogate's uterus may provide the environment that the healthy embryo might need in order to be able to implant and grow and for that pregnancy to be sustained to term. Let's talk around the surrogacy process step by step. One of the biggest fear that people have about surrogacy is the unknown, not knowing what they're walking into. Let me lay out the process clearly as I can. Step 1 one is that of research and education. Before using anything else, you educate yourself, speak to the counselor, and ideally other intended parents who have been through the surrogacy process successfully. What you'd be doing right now counts as step one. The next step, which is step two, is choose your path, the agency. Or are you going to go about it independently? A surrogacy agency handles the matching. They will do the coordination. They will provide support for both you, the couple, and the intended surrogate mother through the entire process. Using a surrogate agent is the most supported way of going about it, as well as being the most common route of conceiving a child through surrogacy. An independent surrogacy typically is with someone you already know. So it requires a personal coordination, but can reduce the agency cost. So I've seen several examples where a sister is not able to conceive a child, so she will go to her younger sister, and there will be a agreement within the family that the younger sister will carry the child. So that's the independent process. Going through surrogacy that way is very common in certain cultures, and it saves a lot of the agency cost, but it's not without risks. So further down the line, the younger sister or the older sister, whatever the case might be, whoever it may be that carried the child, might turn around and say, hey, this is my child because I carry the child, even though the child may not be biologically related to the surrogate mother. So there are risks when you go about it the independent way. You could decide to go about it the independent way and still employ the services of a surrogacy lawyer who will be there to defend you, and there will be legal documents there that could provide a level of protection even if you wanted to use the independent surrogacy way. The third step is the matching process. If you're using an agency, you'll review the profile of the pre-screened surrogates, so women who have already completed a medical, psychological, and background screening, communication styles, and shared expectations. Most intended parents and surrogates have a call, a meeting, before officially committing to the match. So you can sit down with the person that you may have chosen as a couple and talk to the surrogate mother. At this meeting, no question is taboo, and I strongly encourage that even if you feel some type of way or you think, oh, this question is not appropriate to be asking the surrogate mother, you ask that question, because you do not want for you not to have asked that question and later on for that to come and haunt you if that surrogate mother is behaving in a certain type of way, which if you had found out about it earlier by asking simple questions, it would have saved you a lot of heartache, a lot of sorrow that you may eventually go through. So at that meeting, be as thorough as you can. If there is also another family member that's quite close to you as a couple, I strongly encourage that you bring another trusted family member or trusted friend to that appointment, so that they may think of questions that you may not necessarily have thought of because you're under the emotions and the stress of going through that process. So if you're going for a surrogate agency, they must offer to facilitate a meeting with the surrogate mother before you go through the process. If they don't, that's not the agency for you. Step 4 is the legal contract. Both parties, the intended parents and the surrogate, work with separate lawyers or attorneys. And what must happen is that they must negotiate and sign a very comprehensive surrogacy agreement. This is absolutely non-negotiable. The contract should cover the compensation, if there's going to be any exchange of money, the communication, how you should communicate, the parental rights, and contingencies for various scenarios. So let me give you an example. If a couple decides to go for a surrogate mother, this is especially important for the ladies. How you feel comfortable communicating with that mother. Is it an agreement whereby whenever your husband communicates with a surrogate mother, you insist on being there? Is the agreement going to be that the surrogate mother is going to come to the country where you're at, or is she going to live in her own house? Is the surrogate mother going to be given a monthly allowance? Is that something she's asking for? Is the surrogate mother going to, if she is married, is she going to continue having, intimacy with her husband or her partner while she's carrying your baby? You have to put all of those scenarios on the table, and they have to be documented and written in that contract, and both parties must feel comfortable with all the different scenarios before signing the contract. There may also be some clause whereby in the contract you put something along the lines of, if there isn't a scenario that eventually arises, that eventually develops, and we choose to address that, we choose to review the scenario, review the contract, is it something that both parties feel comfortable you're doing whilst the surrogate mother is pregnant. Say you're not happy with the fact that she's drinking alcohol all of a sudden and she's starting to smoke while she's carrying your baby. Is it possible for both lawyers to step in and impose certain rules on the surrogate mother? You must leave no stones, no scenarios unturned, as much as is possible for you. That contract should address what happens before she falls pregnant, while she's pregnant, and after she delivers your baby. Step number 5. This is the actual medical process. What is actually going to happen in the process of trying to get the surrogate mother pregnant with your embryo. So once the contracts are signed, the clinical process actually begins. This will include the egg retrieval from you being the biological mother of the baby, because that egg is going to come from you, or a donor should you choose to use a donor. Fertilization in a lab to create the embryo will then happen. Then when the embryo is at a good enough stage in the petri dish, the embryo will then be transferred to the surrogate mother's uterus. A 2-week wait time scale will be allowed to elapse before we carry out a pregnancy test on the surrogate mother. Step 5 is that joyful pregnancy. Finally, there's a positive pregnancy test. If the transfer is successful, your surrogate mother is pregnant with your biological child. This phase lasts approximately 9 months. Communication, mutual respect, and clearly established expectations are everything during the season. Remember those things that you had agreed during the meeting, all these questions that you asked her during the initial meeting where you met her for the first time, and all those things that you documented in the legal contract. This is when they are going to be expected to take place. And this is where sometimes it goes sour for some couples, especially those who have taken some things for granted and have not documented things enough, or have been in the excitement, in the euphoria of finally becoming parents, that they have forgotten key things to address in the contract. Mind you, this will also apply even if you are using an independent surrogate. So you must have all of those things documented in the contract. So let's say, for example, that the surrogate mother is your friend, your sister, and you have taken things for granted because you say to yourself, this is my sister, this is my friend, there's no way that anything can go left, anything can go wrong. What about when your husband starts to visit your sister regularly? What about when your sister starts to make inappropriate demands financially and even an emotional demand on yourself and your husband? What is actually going to happen? This is when going through the process of surrogacy can actually be detrimental to your mental health when you haven't addressed things properly. During that pregnancy, you may experience a horrible 9 months period simply because you have not addressed things properly to begin with, and you have not set boundaries. Those boundaries must be set before she falls pregnant, and you must enforce those boundaries at the very start of the pregnancy. Do not get overly carried away with the fact that she's now pregnant and you now let your guards down, because that may come back to bite you. Step 7 is the birth and the legal parentage. Your baby will now be born. Congratulations. In most states in the US and in other countries like the UK, in Australia, and a lot of the Western countries, a pre-birth order will ensure that your names appear on the birth certificate as the legal parents from day one. So this is something you cannot afford not to let the surrogate mother know. You must let her know that her name will not appear anywhere on the child's birth certificate. But of course, that's up to your lawyer to do the due diligence and ensure that she is well informed. And your lawyer will guide you through whatever parentage processes applies in your jurisdiction. Now, we've addressed all the steps, and should everything go smoothly with those steps, you will then be proud parents. And praying everything goes smoothly, you are then able to bring up your child. Now, timeline realities. Now, let's talk about the timeline, and let's be real about what to expect with our timeline. The full journey from matching to birth typically can take 18 months to get this 3 full years. So before going into this, manage your expectations and know this is not a marathon, but rather a sprint. Give yourself grace and pace accordingly. Don't be in a hurry. Don't start fussing and fighting when things are not happening quickly as you would expect. This video has come to shed the light on the whole process of surrogacy, and one of the things that I want to emphasize is the fact that it it is a sprint. It does not happen quickly. Let's talk about the benefits of surrogacy. Given how long, expensive, emotionally complex surrogacy can be, why do people choose to go through it? Here's what makes this path transformative for so many families. Needless to say that the first is going to be the biological connection to your child. For many intended parents, having a child who is genetically related to them is deeply meaningful. Gestational surrogacy makes this possible for people who could not otherwise achieve this. And another benefit of surrogacy is the fact that it's a known and monitored pregnancy. It's another path to parenthood. In surrogacy, the surrogate mother is medically screened. She's monitored throughout the pregnancy, and contractually she is committed to prenatal care standards. Another benefit of surrogacy is that you are allowed to play an active role in your baby's story, even whilst the baby is inside the womb of the surrogate mother. You will be allowed to be present at the birth and build a meaningful relationship with the surrogate. Now, this is where the couple must come to an agreement and have a standard that they both stick to when it comes to interacting with the surrogate mother and possibly the family of the surrogate mother. The bottom line is that throughout the antenatal journey that surrogate mother will go through, this is your baby's, this is your child's beginning, and you are allowed to be an active part of it. It's also beneficial because there is a legal framework that protects everyone. When it's done correctly with qualified lawyers or attorneys, surrogacy provides legal clarity about parental rights before the baby is born. Another benefit is that you get the gift of a family when other paths just weren't enough. For countless couples, surrogacy did not just give them a child. It gave them healing. It gave them hope. It closed a chapter of grief and opened an extraordinary chapter of joy. Now, show me something with just benefits and no challenges, I will question whatever that thing is, because very often there will be many benefits, but there will also be challenges that you must be aware of and that you must be prepared to overcome, especially as a couple. I would be doing all of you wonderful people watching this video a great disservice if I only looked at the beautiful parts. So let's be honest about those challenges, because knowing the challenges in advance is how you will prepare for them. The first challenge has to be the fact that surrogacy is a big financial investment, and it's significant. In the US of A, surrogacy typically costs between $100,000 to $200,000, possibly even more. This is a real barrier for many families, and it deserves an honest acknowledgement. Let's be honest, as beautiful as this reproductive technology or reproductive invention may be, not everyone is going to be able to afford it. That is why very often some people choose to go through independent surrogacy, because with independent surrogacy, very often the need to compensate the surrogate mother does not exist, because it's often a very close family member or very close friend. So the cost of surrogacy is no joke. The other challenge is the fact that there are no guarantees. IVF transfer cycles don't always result in pregnancy. Some intended parents go through 2, 3, or more transfer attempts before having a successful pregnancy. And each attempt, successful or not, carry a very big emotional and financial weight. The emotional complexity is real. Watching everyone else carry your child, navigating feelings of being on the outside of the pregnancy, managing the relationship with your surrogate mother through both beautiful and difficult moments. These are emotionally demanding realities that require preparation and strong support. The next challenge is the legal risk that exists in certain places. Surrogacy laws are not uniform. They are not the same even within a country. Let's take the United States of America, for example. The surrogacy laws will change from state to state, not to talk of the different surrogacy laws that exist between countries. International surrogacy adds a layer of complexity because you then have to consider immigration and citizenship laws that must be carefully researched and professionally navigated. The relationships involved require ongoing care, and very often frictions can arise in that relationship. I cannot overemphasize the need to create boundaries that both parties within the intended parent couples must adhere to. Invest in your relationship as a couple from the start, at the beginning. That means if you are a strong couples and things were good, you need to invest into each other even more during the surrogacy process, because it's very easy for especially the woman who has struggled to conceive for her mind to start drifting. So when a couple decides to go for surrogacy, I would say there is a heavy expectation on the man to continuously reassure his wife, continuously speak to her about how much he loves her and how important he feels that she is and how much she is woman enough. It's just that she just couldn't carry that child, because going through surrogacy, the woman is going to be very fragile. Now, I'm not shedding the responsibility on the intended mother, so the mother who's awaiting for the surrogate mother to give her her biological child. I'm not shedding the responsibility if you are a woman who has personal issues with confidence and you have lots of trauma. Going through surrogacy is going to be very difficult. You are going to doubt your husband at the slightest thing that he says that has to do with the surrogate mother. So it's important to realize that this may be a challenge, and before you even consider looking for a surrogate agency, work on yourself as the woman. Even though you may have set up all the necessary boundaries, you've talked about the different scenarios within your legal contracts, you just have to be aware that challenges may still arise, frictions may still arise. The next challenge is the timeline can stretch. There may be matching delays, there may be failed transfer, medical complications. The process can take longer than expected. You must be emotionally resilient and have a solid support system. These will be essential. We've briefly touched on cost. Let's dissect this cost involved with surrogacy. Let's talk numbers. Entering this process without financial clarity is one of the most avoidable mistakes people can make. Here is a realistic breakdown of what surrogacy costs in the US. Now, this cost is for the US, and in the US they have multiple different agencies. So I would argue that in the US and other developed countries like the UK, Germany, Australia, France, these countries, there will be some type of competition between the different agencies, and that will affect the cost of the surrogacy process. So that means that if there are multiple agents that offer this service, then the cost is likely to be lower. But in countries where surrogacy agents are few and far between, it is likely that these costs are going to be even higher. Yes, higher than even in the US. International surrogacy. Internationally, surrogacy in countries like Georgia, Colombia, Greece, or Mexico can cost from $50,000 to $90,000, though costs may vary significantly based on the legal requirements, the medical protocol, and specific agencies involved. So I did say that in countries where surrogacy is not very common, the cost is likely to be higher. However, there are some countries that the process is very common, and these countries like Mexico or Colombia, they attract reproductive medicine tourism, so they do tend to keep these costs a bit lower. The bottom line is, if you have decided that you're going to go for surrogacy, do your research. Yes, you might go to some of these countries that are cheaper, but one of the things that you must ask yourself is, am I going to encounter some legal issues when I'm trying to leave the country with my baby? Am I going to have to stay in that country throughout the 9 months? There are several different aspects to consider if you are going to go for surrogacy in a country where the cost of going through this process is going to be cheaper. Cheaper doesn't always mean better. Cheaper can sometimes come with added stress. Are you going to use a surrogate mother who is a national of that country? That person may actually have more rights than you being a foreigner. Or are you going to go into this country with the surrogate mother who is from a different country? So you will have to consider visas, citizenship, so on and so forth. There are so many things to consider before going for it, particularly when you just look at the cost and you want to go about it the cheaper way. Going into a country where it's cheaper might not necessarily end up being cheaper after all, if you get my drift. Let's say you cannot afford paying all this money off with your own pockets. There are other financial pathways that you can consider, and some intended couples explore personal savings or home equity. They look to taking out fertility specific loans. There are employer fertility benefits, and this is increasingly more common in larger companies, in big corporate companies. And there are community fundraising and crowdfunding. Now, how do you find the right surrogate? So now listen, finding your surrogate is both a practical and a very deeply personal process. Let me walk you through what you're looking for and what good agencies screen for before you ever see a profile. So the person that's going to be your surrogate mother has to be medically qualified. She has to be between the ages of 21 to 40 years old and has carried and delivered at least one healthy pregnancy of her own. Medically, she has to have a healthy body mass index, and that's the relation of the height to the weight, and she shouldn't be doing any drugs, or there should be no alcohol use. And she must also have an up-to-date health screen that will include a full screen for sexually transmitted diseases, a full screen for cervical cancer through a pap smear, and all the other necessary screens. It is also not recommended that you use a surrogate mother that has had multiple miscarriages of her own. Your surrogate agent should exclude surrogate mother who have past medical history like autoimmune diseases. There has to be a complete psychological readiness. The surrogate mother needs to have completed a thorough mental health evaluation. She needs to have a clear and informed understanding of what she is agreeing to do. That's why she needs to have her own lawyer. She needs to have a stable personal life of her own and have her own support system in place. She must be comfortable with the level of contact and communication that you prefer. Now, what does this mean? Her having her own support system is going to be crucial, because in what may happen in certain jurisdiction is that the surrogate mother, immediately after giving birth to the child, still has a legal right over that child. And if she doesn't have her own support system, and if she's not stable psychologically, she may then decide not to hand over that child, and by law she will be protected. So it's important that she is supported by her own lawyer, her own attorney, but also has a good support system, because she might decide to hold on to that child with the aim of extorting money from you, of making financial demands on you. But if she is financially stable, she has got a comfortable lifestyle on her own and doesn't really need constant money from you, and during her pregnancy she's not someone that is dependent on you to feed her, that sort of person is less likely to financially or emotionally blackmail you after the child is born. I didn't really want to use the word blackmail, but that's exactly what can happen. So it's very important for you to choose a surrogate mother who has her own support system, who is comfortable somewhat financially on her own. And so that means even before she decided to go for the surrogate process, she was okay. There has to be personal compatibility. Now, the values, as we said, and the communication style must align with yours. Your expectations must be shared about relationship during the pregnancy. Clearly, compatible boundaries on both sides must also be established. In finding a surrogate mother, take your time. The match matters a great deal, more than the actual timeline. Time is going, I need to have this child. Guess what? The surrogate mother that you're going to choose, if you do not use a stringent criteria to pick her, that timeline can be even more extended if you're not careful. This is going to be one of the most important relationships that you're ever going to enter into. Don't rush it. Take your time. You've waited this long to have a child anyway. What's a couple of months more? What's even a year, 18 months, or even 3 years more in order to pick the right person? Hey, you're still watching. Thanks for doing so. Have you subscribed? Have you hit the like button? Have you shared? And have you hit the bell of notification? If you haven't, please ensure that you do so. That's where we get our reward from more people coming across this useful content. Thank you for sharing, thank you for liking, and thank you for subscribing. Let's get back to the video. Now, in the second part of this video, I wanted to talk about, is going for surrogacy the right move for you right now? Let's start by talking about personal readiness. We've covered a lot of ground. Let's bring it together with the central question that this entire video has been building towards. Is surrogacy the right move for you at this moment? Here are some honest questions that I want you to sit with. It's not a checklist to pass, but it's a conversation to have with yourself and with your husband. The first question is, are you financially prepared? Do you have a realistic and concrete plan to secure the funds? Financial stress mid-surrogacy is one of the hardest things to navigate, and every other financial commitments that you may have. You don't have to have the full amount of money in your hand today, but you need a clear plan of how you will make sure that the funds are available when they are required. The second question I want you to ask yourself in deciphering whether surrogacy is the right move for you right now is whether or not you are emotionally ready. Have you had the space and the time to process the circumstances that brought you to this very point? Are you in a stable enough emotional place to take a process that will have its highs and its lows and everything in between, stretched across a period of 18 months to possibly even 3 years? Emotional readiness doesn't mean that you're not scared. It just means that you have the foundation to handle what comes. The third question is, do you have the right people around you, personally, professionally, and perhaps a community of others who have been through it, who can walk alongside you as you go through this process that will have its challenges that we've already discussed? Do you have a trusted friend, a support group? These aren't luxuries. These are people that you will actually need during this process, and they are people that will be indispensable and will be necessities. The fourth question that will help you determine whether this is the right move for you right now is, have you done your legal and medical homework? Do you actually understand the surrogacy laws in your state or country, or whichever country you want to go to carry out the surrogate process? Have you spoken to a reproductive endocrinologist specialist who has reviewed your specific condition? Have you had a thorough discussion with a reproductive specialist who has come to the conclusion that, yes, I believe, in view of your medical condition, I believe that surrogacy might be the right move for you? Before even contacting a surrogacy agency, have you had a chance to speak to a surrogacy lawyer? If some of these are still no's, that's okay. They should be your next step. Question number 5. Do you have peace? Not certainty, peace. The kind of settle that tells you this is the right direction. Even if something feels quietly right, lean on that. Now, for me, as a medical professional that is also a Christian, I will say, have you asked the Lord? Are you a Christian going through this predicament, this dilemma? Should you go for surrogacy? Should you not? It is a journey in and of itself. You must sit down and seek God, and He will answer you. The scriptures say, ask me and I will show you deep and hidden things that you have not known. It's very clear. And even when you get the conviction that surrogacy is okay, as a believer, as a Christian, the vessel is very important. The surrogate mother is very important. There will be an exchange of blood between your child, your biological child, and the blood of that biological mother. Have you sought the Lord and sought His counsel about that surrogate mother? Who is she? It's not just about meeting the medical guidelines and everything is okay with her medically, but spiritually, are things okay with her? Is God leading you to choose a certain surrogate mother? This is not a journey of strictly medical, legal, but as a Christian, it's also a spiritual journey. In my opinion, God is the originator of the concept of surrogacy. When He decided to use a virgin to birth His one and only Son, Jesus Christ, and came here on planet Earth, He had to do it through a surrogate mother. But there are several different things that need to be considered, medically, legally, but also spiritually. I would say another thing, if you are a Christian couple on here considering surrogacy, another major support for you will be your pastors, people who can keep things confidential nonetheless. Surrogacy is one of the most complex and profound human journey that a person can take towards acquiring a family, and it requires courage and support for everyone that will be involved. But for thousands of families, it's been worth every single challenge that they have met along the way. You just have to ask yourself if this is something that God is allowing you to become a mother or a father through. I hope this video has been helpful and is giving you all the different aspects that you need to consider before deciding that this is the right path for you to become a parent. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video. I'm Dr. Kady, right here on Hey Doc. Take care. See you later.